My name is Calla. I was 22 when my parents called me home. Said it was just dinner, but when I walked in, there was no food, no hugs, no love. Just 3 faces already turned against me. They believed every lie my brother told. Called me a thief, a disgrace. Told me to pack. What they didn't know was that I was already carrying 2 heartbeats, twins, from the man they swore would leave. But he didn't. They pushed me out. But I didn't disappear. I built something stronger than their silence. And when they came crawling back, they didn't find a daughter. They found a woman who didn't need them anymore. They said it was just dinner, a casual Sunday thing. Everyone's coming, be here by 6. I almost didn't go. Something in my chest tightened when I read Mom's text, but I told myself I was being paranoid. Again. I drove in silence, no music, fingers tight on the steering wheel. The sun was setting in that golden, cinematic way Arizona does best, but my chest felt heavy. As I pulled into the driveway, everything looked exactly as I remembered. The front porch light still flickered, the hydrangeas were overwatered like always, and the American flag above the mailbox had faded to almost pink. It should have felt like coming home, but I didn't exhale. Inside, the air was too still. No clatter from the kitchen, no clinking of dishes, just silence. My dad sat in his usual recliner, staring straight ahead. My mom on the edge of the couch, hands clasped in her lap. Eli, my brother, slouched in the armchair with one ankle resting on his knee, a smirk tugging at the corner of his mouth, like this was going to be fun for him. "You're late," Dad said, not looking at me. "Traffic," I muttered, even though it was a lie. I'd driven around the block twice before coming in. I waited for someone to smile, to say hi, to move. No one did. Dad finally looked at me. "Sit down, Calla." It wasn't a request. I sat. Eli didn't waste time. "We know what you did." I blinked. "Excuse me?" He slid a paper across the coffee table, a bank statement, one withdrawal, highlighted in orange. I started. "You took from Mom's retirement account," he interrupted. "No," I said, shaking my head. "That's not what happened. She's been lying to all of us," Eli snapped, "and she's been sleeping with Chris." I froze. Chris? His best friend? You think I would— "Don't lie, Calla," Mom cut in, still not looking up. "It's exhausting." My throat burned. "You've changed," Dad added. "You lie, you take, you shame this family." I looked between them. "You really think I'd do any of that?" "We've thought about this for a long time," Dad said. "We've spoken to a lawyer," Eli added too quickly. That's when I knew this wasn't about a mistake. This was a verdict. "You're being removed from the trust," Dad said, effective immediately. "And we think it's best you leave tonight," Mom whispered. I blinked. "Leave? Tonight?" "There's a bag packed in the hallway," Eli said. "We figured this might get dramatic." I stood. Not because I agreed, but because something inside me had gone suddenly, dangerously still. I walked toward the hallway, my body light and numb, like I'd left it somewhere back in the living room. At the garage door, Dad was tossing something into the trash. I leaned forward. It was my childhood photo album, the one with glitter stickers peeling at the corners, the one only I used to flip through. "You won't need it where you're going," he said without turning around. That did it. My hand went to my stomach as if to steady myself. They didn't know I was already carrying 2 lives, didn't know the truth they tried to erase would grow louder with every breath I took. I stepped outside into the cooling desert air, bag in hand, tears unshed. Behind me, the house I grew up in closed its door, but ahead of me, something else had just opened. I didn't remember how I got to the motel. Somewhere between the last intersection and the blinking vacancy sign, I must have driven. But I couldn't tell you what streets I took, what songs played, if any at all. The world outside felt like it had turned its back on me, and maybe I'd done the same to it. Room 209. Second floor, thin door, thinner walls. the kind of place where the curtains never close all the way and the air conditioner rattles like it's choking on dust. I dropped the bag, their bag, by the bed. Didn't open it, didn't sit. I stood in the middle of the room staring at the wallpaper, pale yellow flowers peeling in the corners. A memory rose, me as a child, tracing the shape of flowers on the wallpaper at Grandma's house. I'd thought the patterns would protect me. Nothing protected me now. The silence pressed into my ears, my chest, my throat. It was loud, too loud. I went into the bathroom and closed the door just to shrink the world smaller. That's when I noticed it. A pull. Not pain, just weight. Low and firm, like my body was reminding me it existed. And then I realized, 12 days late, my breath caught. I opened my purse and pulled out the emergency $20 I always kept hidden behind a receipt from 2 summers ago. Slid on my hoodie, walked 2 blocks to a gas station. The fluorescent lights inside made everything feel artificial. My face in the security mirror, the plastic-wrapped sandwiches, the pregnancy tests behind the counter. I bought one, said nothing, took the bag, walked out. Back in the room, I sat on the edge of the bathtub, the test in hand, instructions unread. I already knew how it worked. I just didn't know what came after. Minutes passed like hours. Then, 2 lines. I stared, blinked, stared again. Still there. 2 undeniable, unapologetic, irreversible lines. I looked at myself in the mirror. Not the girl who was kicked out of her house. Not the disappointment. Not the liar they named me. Just me. Tired. Alone. But alive. "You're not alone," I whispered. My voice cracked on the second word. I placed a hand on my stomach, slowly, carefully, like I was afraid I'd scare the truth away. Then I said it again, not to the mirror, but to the life growing inside me. "You are the only truth they couldn't erase." The motel smelled like bleach and something older, maybe regret.
But I laid down anyway. Not because I was okay, but because I finally understood. This wasn't rock bottom. It was the start of something. I didn't answer his first message. Rowan's name lit up my screen just after sunrise. If it's true, you're not alone. 6 words. No punctuation, no pressure. I stared at them until the screen went dark. For a long time, I didn't move. I wasn't sure what would hurt more, that he still cared, or that he might not stay. We hadn't spoken in nearly 4 months. Things had ended without a door slam, without a clear goodbye, just silence stretched too far to cross. I pulled the thin motel blanket tighter around me. My hand rested instinctively over my stomach, and I whispered, "I don't know if I'm ready for anyone." But 2 hours later, there was a knock. Not loud, not frantic, just 3 soft taps. Steady. Familiar. I didn't ask who it was. I already knew. When I opened the door, Rowan stood there like he wasn't sure if I'd slam it in his face. Same worn-out boots, hoodie sleeves pushed to the elbows, hair messier than usual. He looked older. Or maybe just more tired. "Hi," he said, voice quiet. "Careful." "Hi." He didn't step in until I moved aside. Didn't ask anything. Didn't stare at my stomach. He just sat on the only chair in the room, elbows on his knees, fingers laced. I sat on the bed. The silence between us wasn't awkward. Just heavy. "I didn't tell you," I finally said. "I figured." Pause. "I didn't leave because of this, Calla." "I know." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded napkin, scribbled on it, 1 word. "Together." I stared at it like it might disappear if I blinked. "You don't know what you're signing up for," I said. "Maybe not," he said. "But I know what I'm not walking away from again." We didn't talk more than that. Not about names, not about plans. Instead, we drove. No destination, just movement. He parked at a diner that looked like it hadn't updated its menu since the 80s. Inside, the booths were cracked vinyl, and the waitress didn't even pretend to care. 2 coffees. No sugar. No questions. When they arrived, he slid one toward me and said, "You don't have to let me stay. But if you do, I'll stay as long as it takes." I didn't reach for his hand, but I didn't pull mine away when he placed his fingers gently over mine. Not a promise. Not yet. Just a beginning. And this time, I wasn't the only one standing in the wreckage. Rowan's apartment wasn't much. 2 rooms, paint chipped near the baseboards, a couch that sagged in the middle, and a leaky faucet that never quite turned off. But for the first time in what felt like forever, I woke up without flinching. No door slams, no whispered accusations from the hallway, no one reminding me I wasn't enough. Just light creeping through thin blinds and the smell of coffee I hadn't made. I shuffled into the kitchen, still wearing his old hoodie. Rowan was leaning against the counter, barefoot, eyes soft with sleep. He didn't ask how I slept. He just handed me a mug and said, "Sit. You've got thinking to do." I sat. The old card table doubled as a desk. I opened my laptop, battered, stickers peeling, and stared at the blinking cursor. I didn't know where to begin, so I started with what I knew. Business name, Kalira Biotech. A mix of names, mine and the one I might give my daughter, Kala, Lyra. It wasn't clever, but it was personal. Not a company built to prove a point. A company built because I was done waiting for permission. I created an email account, reserved the domain, began drafting the executive summary based on the research I'd built in undergrad, the very one Eli had pitched as his at a symposium 2 years ago. They'd called him brilliant, but I still had the files. I still had the drafts with metadata. I had the notes, the feedback, the late-night lab logbook that bore my initials in every margin. And now, I had the silence to think. That afternoon, Rowan found me hunched over the table, surrounded by scratch paper, grant applications, and half a peanut butter sandwich I'd forgotten to finish. "You've been at this for hours," he said. "I know." "Have you blinked?" "Probably not." He smiled, slid a backup charger across the table, and sat nearby with a book in hand. Didn't say another word. And I kept working. I didn't need fanfare. I didn't need their trust fund. I didn't need my name framed on their wall. I just needed to do the work, slide by slide, word by word. I was building something no one could take this time. And the name on every page? Mine. The startup showcase was in the basement of a co-working space. Whiteboards still stained from someone else's ambition, and folding chairs that creaked louder than the speakers. It wasn't glamorous, but it was the first room I'd entered not as someone's daughter, but as a founder. I arrived early. Too early. Rowan offered to walk me in. I said no. He handed me a protein bar and said, "You don't have to prove anything. But if you do, let it be for yourself." I nodded and walked in alone. At the end of the hallway, hanging in perfect lighting, was a 10-foot silk banner. Accelerating Youth Innovation, sponsored by the Sloan Foundation. And right in the middle, Eli, smiling like he owned the building, his arms crossed beside a quote, "Science means possibility." I believe in giving young minds the platform to change the world. Only, I'd written those words. 2 years ago, in a grant proposal, I stayed up 3 nights drafting, back when I still thought carrying our last name meant something. I froze, could have walked out, but I didn't. Because I remembered the night I registered Kellerabio.com. I remembered Rowan beside me, quiet and steady, and the napkin still folded in my notebook with one word written on it: together. When my name was called, I stood. I didn't talk about betrayal. I talked about biology, about what we'd built, low-cost hormone diagnostics for clinics that didn't make headlines. Slide by slide, I let the work speak. And at the end, I showed one photo. Me, hand on my belly. A message behind me on the mirror. "They don't see you yet. Build anyway." The room fell still. Then a voice. "Sloan? Any relation to Eli Sloan?" I smiled. "I don't have a brother." That was all. 10 minutes later, I sat on the steps outside, hands buzzing, not from nerves, but from clarity. Rowan joined me, said nothing, just handed me lemonade. I didn't cry, didn't gloat. That night, I opened my inbox. One new message: your clarity is unforgettable. We'd like to begin with $25,000. It wasn't much, but it was mine. And for the first time since they erased me, I was no longer rebuilding, I was becoming. The lawsuit wasn't glamorous. It was paperwork, mostly. Emails, affidavits, screenshots I'd organized into folders at 2 a.m. while Rowan dozed nearby, one hand still holding my foot under the blanket like he was anchoring me to the earth. The cease and desist from Eli came first, then a formal claim that I'd misrepresented familial affiliations and misappropriated shared intellectual property. But the thing about liars, they leave footprints. And I had everyone. Meeting recordings, version histories, lab log books, even a message from Eli himself where he'd joked, "Glad you're doing all the boring R&D? I'll make it sound sexy." I sent it all to my attorney. A woman named Harper who once said, "I've had brothers like him in every boardroom I've ever been in. Let's make sure yours doesn't get the last word." The hearing was quiet. No jury. Just a judge with a braid too tight and a voice that cut like a scalpel. I stood when asked. I answered questions clearly. When Harper submitted the audio files, my parents discussing how to trim Kala out before the foundation was launched, I didn't flinch. When the judge ruled in my favor, stating that all intellectual property, research credit, and associated patents belonged solely to me, I didn't cry. I just breathed. Outside the courthouse, someone from a local science blog asked if I had a message for my family. I said, "I already gave it." In court. That night, back in our little home, I sat on the floor of the nursery folding baby clothes Rowan's mom had sent in a box marked "just in case." The twins, Lyra and Jude, slept in their bassinet, curled toward each other like commas in a sentence that wasn't done yet. I checked my phone. A new message from Dad. Just 5 words. "She's gone. Hope you're proud." No context, no apology. I locked the screen, turned it face down, and didn't answer. Instead, I opened the Kalira Bio dashboard and clicked Submit on our first clinical partnership. Then I stepped outside into the small backyard Rowan had been turning into a garden. Lemon trees, a swing, 2 chairs that didn't match. He joined me, handed me a glass of iced tea, and we watched the twins sleep on the monitor. "You okay now?" he asked. I didn't answer right away. I looked at my hands, stronger now, steady, stained faintly from lab dyes and lemon soil. Then I nodded. Not just okay. I'm exactly who I was supposed to be. We sat in the stillness. And for once I didn't think about what they took. I thought about what I'd kept. Later that week, a package arrived. No return address. Inside, wrapped in tissue paper, was a photograph. Me, age 10, in that blue cotton dress Grandma sewed, awkward smile, standing just off-center at a family reunion. A photo I remembered well, because in the version I'd seen, I had been cropped out. But this was the original, scrawled on the back in her handwriting. "This is the version that matters." I tucked it into the nursery wall, right above Lyra's crib. They erased me once. But I didn't fight to be remembered. I built something they couldn't ignore.